The rubber is a second skin. It's the first thing I put on in the morning, long before the cheap, gray-blue fabric of my uniform, and the last thing I take off at night, scrubbing my own hands raw in my tiny apartment bathroom until the smell of bleach is replaced by the smell of antiseptic soap. Here, in Matteo Rossi's house, the gloves are non-negotiable. I'm Eva O'Connell. I am 27 years old, and I am a ghost who scrubs grout. I am the hourly help, the one who comes in at 4 p.m., when the regular staff leaves and does the deep cleaning until 9 p.m. I prefer it this way. Less people. Mr. Rossi's brownstone in Brooklyn is a fortress of quiet taste and old money. It doesn't scream mob, it whispers power. The mahogany is dark. The marble is cold, and every surface reflects a muted, wealthy sheen. My job is to maintain that sheen. I am good at my job. I am invisible, meticulous, and I always wear my thick, yellow, elbow-length rubber gloves. Even when I'm just dusting, the other staff, the ones who leave before I arrive, probably think it's a phobia. Germs. Chemicals. Maybe. I let them think it. It's easier than the truth. The truth is that the gloves are not to keep the world out. They are to keep me in. Tonight, the world was trying to break in. A nor'easter, a real monster of a storm, was slamming New York. The wind screamed against the 19th century glass, a high-pitched wail that set my teeth on edge. The power had been flickering for an hour. I was just finishing the kitchen, wiping down the stainless steel industrial-grade stove, when the lights didn't just flicker. They died. The kitchen was plunged into a sudden, oppressive black. My breath hitched. I froze, my rubber-clad hand still on the cold stove. The only light was the frantic blue-white flashing of the blizzard outside the kitchen's garden view window, and the heavy, measured footsteps approaching from the hall. I didn't need to see him to know it was him, Matteo Rossi. He was a man made of shadows and discipline. I'd seen him maybe 5 times in the 6 months I'd worked here. He was the finance brain, they said, the one who made the family's assets legitimate. He was tall, moved with a lethal quiet, and had eyes so dark they seemed to absorb the light in a room. He was polite, always. Cold, always. He never raised his voice. And that, in this world, was the most terrifying trait of all. Ms. O'Connell. His voice cut through the dark. It wasn't loud, but it commanded the space. A beam from a small, powerful flashlight hit the floor, then angled up to illuminate his face. He wasn't looking at me, but at the main breaker box near the pantry. "Looks like you're stuck here for a while," he said. His tone was flat. "The streets are impassable. I've told the others they can use the guest rooms." "The others," I whispered. My voice sounded small. "Marco and 2 others from my security team are in the study." He flipped a few breakers. Nothing. "The grid is down." He turned the flashlight beam towards me. I flinched, shielding my eyes. "I can wait in the mudroom, Mr. Rossi, until there's a lull." "Don't be ridiculous," he said, not unkindly. "You'll freeze before you hit the corner. Come on." He walked past me, his flashlight beam illuminating a path to the massive 6-burner gas stove. He clicked one of the heavy knobs. Click, click, whoosh! A blue flame sprang to life, casting a warm, dancing light across the copper pots hanging overhead. He opened the massive refrigerator running on a battery backup. I realized and pulled out milk. From the pantry, he grabbed a tin of high-end cocoa powder and a bag of marshmallows. My boss, the financial head of the Rossi family, was making hot chocolate for his staff in a blizzard. "I find," he said, his back to me as he poured milk into a heavy-bottomed saucepan. That sugar is the best response to a power failure. I stood there, useless, my rubber-gloved hands clasped in front of me. This was wrong. The dynamic was wrong. I was the help. He was the master. He wasn't supposed to be serving. "Mug, please," he said, gesturing with his head toward the cabinet. "Yes, sir." My movements were stiff. I opened the cabinet, the flashlight beam following me. I pulled down a heavy ceramic mug, then another for him. Then I hesitated, thinking of the men in the study. "Just 2 for now," he said, seeming to read my mind. "I'll send Marco in for the rest." He stirred the milk, the small metal whisk making a soft tink, tink, tink against the pan, the kitchen filled with the smell of warming milk and rich chocolate. It was domestic, safe. And that's when I let my guard down. He poured the steaming liquid into the mug I held out. My hands, slick inside the rubber, were unsteady. The heat from the ceramic was immediate, intense. "Careful," he said. Too late. The mug slipped. I tried to catch it, a desperate, clumsy juggle. Hot, scalding cocoa splashed over the back of my right hand, over the glove. The pain was sharp, instant. I cried out, a small, strangled sound. The mug hit the stone floor and shattered. A dark, milky puddle spread across the pristine white marble. I'm so sorry. Mr. Rossi, I'll clean it up. But I wasn't moving. I was staring at my hand. The hot liquid had done more than just burn. It had melted the cheap rubber. The glove had split, a jagged tear running from my knuckle to my wrist. And the cold air of the kitchen was hitting the skin beneath. The skin that was never, ever supposed to be seen. I watched, in what felt like slow motion, as the torn yellow rubber peeled back. There, on the pale, sensitive skin of my inner wrist, were the marks. They were faded, a blurry, blue-green ink, but unmistakable in the flickering gaslight. A string of numbers, a code, and beneath it, small, stylized, the faint outline of a bird, a sparrow. The symbol for the Sparrow Project, a designation, a brand. A victim identification code from an exploitation network that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. I forgot about the broken mug. I forgot about the storm. I forgot how to breathe. Matteo Rossi went silent. He wasn't looking at the mess on the floor. His flashlight beam was frozen, pinned directly on my wrist. I tried to pull my hand back to hide it, but I was paralyzed. His face was a mask, but his eyes changed. The cool indifference was gone. It was replaced by something sharp, calculating, and dark. It wasn't recognition of a wound. It was recognition of a logo. "Sir, He knew. Oh God, he knew the symbol. My blood turned to ice, colder than the wind outside. My training, the one drilled into me for 3 years at the recovery camp, slammed back into my chest. They see it. You run. They know. You die. This man, this quiet, powerful man, he was one of them. He had to be. He knew the mark. The charity project that one of the Rossi factions funded, the one with the bird logo, the NGO. Panic, pure and absolute, clawed up my throat. I stumbled back, hitting the kitchen island. My only thought was the back door. The blizzard was safer than this room, safer than him. Ava. I flinched. He hadn't moved. He hadn't raised his voice. He just stood there, the flashlight beam now lowered to the floor between us. "Don't run." I backed away again, my hand shaking as I fumbled for the doorknob to the mudroom. I'd take my chances with the snow. I'd rather freeze than be taken back. "Stop." He said it with more force this time, but still, he didn't move toward me. "Ava, stay in the kitchen. This door is yours." I froze, my hand on the knob. "This door is yours." It was such a strange thing to say. Not "don't leave" or "you're not going anywhere." It was a statement of choice. A choice I knew was a lie. He turned his back on me. It was the most shocking thing he could have done. He turned his back on a terrified, fleeing girl and pulled his phone from his pocket. My heart was a drum against my ribs, but my feet were glued to the floor. He pressed a single button. It rang once. Marco. His voice was a different kind of cold now. It was steel. "Cancel the downtown meet, indefinitely, because I have a situation here. No, it's a sparrow. Yes, a live one, in my kitchen." My blood ran cold. A live one. He was reporting me. "Lock down the house. Full security protocol. I want the feeds from every camera on this block pulled for the last 6 hours. No one in, no one out. Without my direct authorization, I don't care about the blizzard. Get it done." He hung up. He didn't turn around. He was protecting me. Or was he locking down his property? He made a second call. "Amelia, I need you. Now. At the brownstone. No, it's not a corporate matter. It's a civil rights issue. I have a Jane Doe. She needs immediate, confidential legal protection. Pro bono, of course. Full shield. Yes, Amelia, that kind of protection. Start the paperwork for a witness protection protocol, but keep it off record until I say, just get here." He pocketed his phone. He still hadn't turned around. "Mr. Rossi, what?" "They will be looking for you," he said, his voice quiet, still facing the stove. "A camera on the corner of my street. It's owned by a rival. They watch my house. They would have seen my car stopped outside a medical supply store this afternoon. Just stopped. For 10 minutes. Unusual for me." I didn't understand. A supply store? I stopped to buy a specific type of bandage. For a burn kit. He finally turned, his face unreadable in the dim light. "They'll see that stop as an anomaly. Now, they'll hear I canceled a high-level meet because of an internal issue. They'll put the two things together. They will assume I found something, or someone. They will start searching for a lost asset. They will start looking for you. Eva." He took a slow step toward me. I flinched. He stopped. "I am not going to hurt you." He reached into a drawer by the stove, one I'd never opened. He pulled out a simple silver chain with a single, flat, black pendant on it. He slid it across the marble island. It stopped a foot from my hand. "That is a panic button," he said. "It's linked directly to my personal security line. Not the house, not the family, mine, and to Marco's. You press it, and we will come." I stared at it. "I am giving it to you," he said. "It only works if you agree to take it. If you press it, the choice is yours." He was going against his own people. I'd heard the rumors. The Sparrow Project was a pet charity of another faction, run by a man named Vincent Morelli, a cousin by marriage. Matteo was breaking a rule, a big one. He was choosing to protect the Maid, to investigate his own family. Why, my voice was a rasp. He looked at the broken mug on the floor, at the spilled cocoa. Then his eyes lifted to my torn glove, to the faded numbers that had just signed my death warrant, or possibly my release. "Because," he said, his voice flat, "I fund a lot of things, Ms. O'Connell, but I do not, under any circumstances, fund that." He nudged the pendant an inch closer. "Amelia Park is a civil rights attorney, the best. She is not one of my lawyers. She is your lawyer. You don't have to talk to her. You don't have to talk to me. But you cannot go out into that storm. Not while they're looking." He turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with the blue gas flame, the shattered mug, and the silver pendant lying on the cold, dark stone. My entire life I had been running. Tonight, in a blizzard, a mafia boss had just told me to stay put, and for the first time in 3 years I was considering it. I looked at the door, then at the pendant. "This door is yours." Slowly, my ungloved, shaking, branded hand reached out and took the chain. The pendant was heavy and cold. It rested in the palm of my hand, a solid piece of metal that felt more like a shackle than a key. But I had taken it. The blizzard raged for 2 more days. The brownstone became an island, cut off from the world. The power eventually returned with a low hum, but Matteo Rossi's security protocol remained. I was moved from the staff quarters to a guest suite on the 3rd floor. The sheets were softer than anything I had ever touched. On the 2nd night, Amelia Park arrived. She was not like the lawyers I'd seen on TV. She wore practical boots, a sharp wool coat, and her hair was pulled back in a tight, no-nonsense bun. She radiated an energy that was the opposite of Matteo's stillness. She was kinetic, sharp, and her eyes missed nothing. We met in the library. Matteo stood by the fireplace, a silent sentinel. He did not sit. He did not interfere. He let her speak. "Ava," she said, her voice clear. "My name is Amelia Park. I am a civil rights attorney. I am not Mr. Rossi's lawyer. As of this moment, I am your lawyer. You do not have to pay me. You do not have to talk to me. But I am here to advise you of your rights." I just nodded, my hands clutching the mug of tea she had handed me. "First," she said, "you are not in custody. You are a guest in this house. You can leave at any time. Though, I strongly advise against it. Not because he will stop you," she glanced at Matteo, "but because they will be waiting. Second," she continued, "you control the information. What you tell us, what you don't, this is your story. We are the resources." "What is he?" I whispered, looking at Matteo. "He is a man with a unique capacity," Amelia said carefully. "He can move things you can't. Money, logistics. He can build a fortress. But he needs a map. You have the map." Matteo finally spoke. "Amelia is right. I know the symbol. Eva. I know the Sparrow Project is a front. I know it's funded by associates, but I don't know the how. I don't know the who on the ground." I looked down into my tea. My story. It wasn't a story. It was a dark, cramped room I'd been locked in for years. "It's been 3 years," I said, the words tasting like rust. "I've been out for 3 years, since I got away." "Away from where?" Amelia asked gently. "The camp. They called it a recovery and wellness center. Upstate. It was for girls who'd had a hard time. That's what they told us. But it was just a holding pen, a place to prepare us, to make us compliant." My voice was flat, detached. It was the only way I could talk about it. "They tattooed us on intake," I said, my gaze distant. "Like inventory. They said it was so we could get our wellness benefits. The sparrow was their logo. We were their broken birds." Matteo's jaw tightened. A muscle flexed, the only sign of his anger. I reached into the pocket of the borrowed sweatpants I was wearing. My old wallet was inside. I pulled it out. From a slit in the cheap vinyl lining, I slid out a small, folded, water-damaged photograph. I unfolded it. A girl with bright, terrified eyes and a gap-toothed smile stared back. I wasn't the only one. I whispered. "This is Anna. She was only 12. She was smart. She helped me find the gap in the fence by the delivery entrance. She wasn't fast enough. She was supposed to be right behind me. I waited. But I couldn't finish. I just slid the photo across the polished mahogany table to Amelia. She looked at it, then passed it to Matteo. He held the small square of paper. He stared at Anna's face for a long, heavy minute. When he looked up, his eyes were not cold. They were black ice. "Vincent Morelli," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. For the next 2 days, the study became a war room. Matteo didn't sleep. He sat at his desk, flanked by 3 glowing monitors, and he did what he did best. He followed the money. I sat on the leather couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching him. He worked like a surgeon. "Here," he'd murmur, more to himself than to me. "The Sparrow Charity Fund. It receives anonymous donations. Millions." He clicked. "The fund then grants that money to look at this St. Jude's parish in the Bronx, a fake church. It doesn't exist." Another click. "The church then pays exorbitant shipping invoices to a single vendor, Morelli Cold Transport." His hands stopped. "My brother-in-law, Vincent." He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "He's using refrigerated trucks, pharmaceuticals, he claims. He's moving the moving people as frozen goods." The room was silent, save for the click of the keyboard. He was a different kind of predator. He didn't need fangs. He had spreadsheets. He turned his chair to face me. The trust was building, but it was fragile. He knew he needed more than just the money trail. He needed my memories. "Ava," he said, his voice low. "I need to ask you things you won't want to remember, but I will not take that information from you. We need rules." I pulled the blanket tighter. "Rules?" "Yes. A language. My team and we use safe words. I want to use one with you." He paused, looking for the right words. "If I ask a question you won't answer. If I get too close. If you just need me to stop looking at you, say red. I stop. Instantly. No questions asked." I stared at him. A safe word. He was giving me the help, the ghost, a word that could stop him. "And," he continued, "I will not touch you without asking first, ever. My hand on your arm, my hand on your back, anything. I will ask. You have the right to say no. Is that clear?" "What?" I asked, my voice small. "Because," he said, "the only way to fight this thing is to be the exact opposite of it. They operate on control. We will operate on consent." He tested that promise 3 days later. The blizzard had cleared. The city was a mess of gray slush. Soloway, the accountant for Morelli Transport, has agreed to a meeting. Matteo said, "He's nervous. He thinks this is about his numbers being sloppy. I want you to come." "Me why?" "You were invisible for a living, Ava. You notice things. You survived by noticing things." I was dressed in clothes Amelia had bought. Simple. Black. Anonymous. We met in a private room at a restaurant so expensive the air felt thinner. Soloway was a pale, sweating man who smelled faintly of mothballs and fear. I sat in the corner, holding a glass of water, pretending to be an assistant. "The invoices are for sensitive pharmaceuticals. Matteo." Soloway blustered, wiping his hands on his napkin. "The cold transport is necessary. It's all medical." Matteo just watched him, letting the silence stretch. Soloway excused himself to use the restroom. He came back, his hands damp. He did it again 10 minutes later. The third time he returned, he sat down, and I smelled it. It wasn't soap. It was acetone, like nail polish remover, but sharper, industrial. When Soloway left for the final time to take a call, I leaned forward. "He's lying," I whispered. Matteo's eyes flicked to me. "How do you know?" "His hands. He keeps washing them, but he's not just using soap. I smell a solvent. Acetone or something like it. He's trying to get a chemical off his skin, not just germs. I connected the dots, my old life and my new one snapping together. The cargo, it's not pills. It's a liquid. Something that spills. Something he's afraid of. Something that sedates. Mateo's face was grim. They're not just transporting them. They're subduing them in the trucks, using the chemicals Soloway is so desperate to wash off. As we left the restaurant, Marco, Mateo's head of security, called Boss. Marco's voice was tight over the speakerphone. The word is out. Someone from Soloway's circle talked. The rumor is you're not just auditing, you're talking to a maid. My blood ran cold. Maid. And, boss, there's a 5-alarm fire at the Red Hook warehouse, the one Vincent uses. A trap. A classic move. Vincent was baiting Mateo, trying to pull him into a street war, to draw him out and eliminate the threat. Mateo didn't even blink. He looked out the window as the driver navigated the slick streets. Let it burn, Mateo said. Boss Marco sounded shocked. He wants me to bring guns. I'm bringing lawyers. He hung up. He made another call. Amelia, activate the Nest protocol. Yes, fund it all. I want 3 locations operational by midnight. He turned to me. Vincent thinks my power is in brick and concrete. He's wrong. He was establishing a network, a chain of safe houses, but not the kind I knew. A community kitchen in Queens, he explained, run by a retired nurse, a tattoo removal clinic in the village for women who want to erase marks like yours, a mobile health van, all run by women, no armed men allowed, places to sleep, to heal, and to testify. I was learning a new kind of power. It wasn't about violence. It was about infrastructure. Over the next week, I wasn't just hiding, I was training. Amelia and Marco taught me how to check a room for exits, the 2-person rule for any meeting, how to use the burner phone they gave me, programmed with a dozen different hotline numbers. I was learning to be safe, not just to hide. I remembered something. There was a place, I told Amelia. When I first escaped, a church, St. Michael's. I slept in the back pew for 2 nights. The priest, Father Luis, he gave me soup and a blanket. He didn't ask questions. Amelia's head snapped up. St. Michael's Eva. It was just shut down. The diocese sold the property to a developer. Very sudden. A new kind of fear hit me. Father Luis. Mateo handled it. He was gone for hours. When he returned, he looked tired, but resolute. Father Luis is safe, he said. He's at one of the nests. He was expecting someone to come for him. He's been waiting. Mateo placed a heavy, water-stained accounting ledger on the desk. He gave me this. He knew. Eva. He knew the recovery camp was a lie. He opened the book. It wasn't a ledger of money. It was a ledger of names. Girls. Dozens of them. Dates. Notes. And next to maybe 30 of the names, a small faded stamp, hand-carved from an eraser. A sparrow. He logged every girl who came to him, Mateo said, his voice thick. Everyone he fed. Everyone who was running. He ran his finger down the page, and there, near the bottom, he stopped. Eva O'Connell, fled 1014, severe distress, marked. And next to my name, Father Luis had written down the number, the exact string of digits on my wrist. Mateo looked up, his eyes meeting mine across the desk. It's not just your word against theirs anymore. Eva, we have a manifest. The ledger from Father Luis was a weapon. It shifted the air in the brownstone from defense to offense. Mateo, who had been hunting a ghost in his ledgers, now had a list of names. He had my testimony, and he had the corroboration of a priest. His work became relentless. The study was a 24-hour operation. "He's moved," Matteo announced, his voice flat, pointing to a new set of wires on his monitor. We were deep into the second week, the snow outside having melted into a grim, gray slush. "The Sparrow Project is going dormant. The fire at the warehouse made him nervous. He's diverting the new funds." He clicked, and a glossy web page appeared. "He's rebranding the Morelli Educational Grant." My stomach dropped. "What?" "A scholarship fund for at-risk youth. Families who can't pay their bills apply, and Vincent sponsors them. He's not just taking them off the street anymore. Eva, he's having them handed over, gift-wrapped with a legal signature." He followed the money, his fingers a blur on the keyboard. The grant was funding its first major event, a black tie fundraiser, the Scholars of Tomorrow Gala. "It's an auction," I whispered. The word felt vile, slick in my mouth. A high-end market, disguised as a charity dinner. "He'll showcase his new scholars to his donors." Matteo agreed, his face grim. "And he'll use it to move his existing inventory." My breath caught. Existing inventory. Anna. The photograph I carried, the one I'd shown him, felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. She was 12 when I ran. She'd be 15 now if she was... "She'll be there," I said. It wasn't a guess. If he's moving girls, he'll move the ones he already has. I have to go. No. His refusal was instant. Absolute. "You are the one thing he's looking for. The maid. He knows someone talked. He doesn't know it's you. I will not walk you into his house. And I won't sit here while she's being sold." The shout surprised both of us. My voice, which I'd kept at a whisper for 3 years, echoed off the expensive woodwork. "You see a balance sheet. Matteo, I see her. I see a 12-year-old girl who boosted me over a fence and said, 'Run.' I know her. I'll recognize her. Your men won't." We were locked in a stalemate, his cold logic against my burning certainty. He broke first, but not in the way I expected. "Red," he said, his voice quiet. I froze. "What?" "I'm saying red. I am stopping this. I'm pushing you. I can see what it's doing to you." He stood up and walked to the window, turning his back to me. He was using the safe word. On himself. For me. "There is no other way. Matteo," I said, my voice softer now. "If you don't help me get in, I will use that door you gave me. I will find my own way." He was silent for a full minute. I could see the tension in his shoulders. He was the protector, and I was forcing his hand. "A bargain, then," he said, turning back. "Not a request. A bargain." The terms were set. I would not be a guest. I would be what I had always been invisible. I would be on the catering staff. Marco would be wired to me, an earpiece so small it looked like a hearing aid. Amelia would be in a car, 1 block away, with an emergency writ of habeas corpus and a federal protection order, ready to file the instant I was detained. And his one unbreakable rule: the second I say abort, you walk. No questions. You don't go for Anna. You don't go for anything. You get out. Agreed. Agreed. The night of the gala. The air in the brownstone felt thin, electric. I was in a cheap black and white uniform, my hair pulled into a severe bun. Matteo found me in the kitchen, practicing holding a heavy tray of champagne flutes. My hands were shaking. "Put it down," he said. He was in a bespoke tuxedo, a dark, devastating shadow. "Get your coat. We're going to be late." "This is more important." The black town car cut through the city, but we didn't go downtown. We drove to Queens, to a quiet, walled cemetery. The snow was still clinging to the shadows, and the world was hushed. Marco drove. Matteo sat in the back with me. He led me to a simple, elegant marble headstone. Isabella Rossi, beloved mother. My mother, he said, his voice low, the sound absorbed by the snow. She loved this city, and it took everything from her. He stood, not as the boss, not as the financier, but as a son. My father operated the old way. Favors, violence, debts. When he died, the organization his partners came to collect. My mother was sick. Her medical care was expensive. They used that. They held her life as collateral. I watched his face, outlined by the cold glow of the city lights. I was 16, but I was good with numbers. I found the money they'd hidden. I moved the assets. I created shadow accounts. I made myself the invisible knife, the one who could ruin a man's empire from a back room without ever firing a shot. I made myself so valuable they couldn't touch me. I saved the family finances. He paused, his breath a white cloud in the air. But I was too late. She died, owing us. He turned to me then, and his eyes were not the eyes of a boss. They were the eyes of a 16-year-old boy. I tell you this, Eva, so you understand. Vincent Morelli, he is the thing I swore to destroy. He is the man who uses people as collateral. I will not use you that way. I didn't know what to say. He reached out. His gloved hand stopped, hovering in the air between us, a bare inch from my face. May I? He asked. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. His thumb, soft through the leather, brushed a strand of hair from my cheek. It was the lightest touch I had felt in my entire life, but it anchored me to the spot. It wasn't a touch of possession. It was a touch of permission. You are not collateral, Eva, he whispered. You are the reason. Now, let's go. The gala was a blinding sea of diamonds and noise. I kept my head down, my tray steady, my steps measured, invisible. I see you. Marco's voice was a tiny, reassuring tick in my ear. You're on the east wall. Good. Stay on the perimeter. Across the grand ballroom, I saw Matteo. He moved through the crowd like a panther, effortless and deadly, shaking hands, a cold smile on his face. And then I saw her. She was standing near the stage, laughing. Her hair was an impossible, brilliant platinum blonde. Her red dress clung to her. Madame Seraphine. The woman who had met me at the bus station 3 years ago. The one who had promised me a job, a room, safety. The one who had held my hand, called me Sweet Sparrow, and driven me to the wellness center. The recruiter. My blood turned to ice. My hands spasmed, and the glasses on my tray rattled like chimes. She heard it. Her head turned. Her eyes, pale blue and sharp as glass, scanned the staff. They passed over me, paused, and then snapped back. She knew me. Her smile never wavered. She excused herself from her conversation and drifted, not walking, but gliding, through the crowd. She passed right in front of me, so close I could smell her perfume, tuberose and something metallic. She leaned in, her lips almost brushing my ear, her voice a silken whisper. My, she breathed. They always say sparrows return to the nest. How lovely. She was gone before I could even react. Ava. What was that? Marco's voice was frantic in my ear. Your heart rate just hit 130. Who was that? It's her, I choked out, backing into a service alcove. The recruiter. Her name is Seraphine. Abort, Matteo's voice cut in, sharp and cold. Get to the South Service exit. Now, Eva. No, I hissed. She's here. That means the girls are here. She's the one who handles them. Before he could argue, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. Vincent Morelli, all teeth and expensive charisma, stepped up to the podium. "My friends, thank you for supporting our scholars of tomorrow," he boomed. As he started his speech, Matteo moved. He didn't go for the stage. He walked, calm and unhurried, to the front table. Table 1. Where 2 state senators and the city's biggest real estate developer were sitting. He placed a slim, dark tablet on the white linen tablecloth. "Vincent." Matteo's voice was conversational, but it sliced through the room. The microphone picked it up. Vincent's smile faltered. "Matteo, a pleasure. I didn't know you were... I was just showing our friends here the balance sheet for your charity. It's fascinating." The room went absolutely still. "For instance," Matteo continued, his tone academic, "how you managed to allocate 60% of all donations to refrigerated transport, and how those transport invoices for pharmaceuticals were all paid to a shell company owned by you. This wasn't an argument. It was a public execution." Vincent's face turned a deep, blotchy red. "This is family business. You..." "No, Vincent," Matteo said, his voice dropping, but the microphone amplified every cold word. "You used my family's name to do this. This is my business." He tapped the tablet. "And my partners, they're very interested in my audit." The men at the table weren't looking at Matteo. They were looking at Vincent with open disgust. Vincent wasn't just a criminal. He was sloppy. He was a liability. Vincent stared at Matteo, his mask of charm completely gone. "You'll regret this," he hissed, a promise meant only for Matteo, but the mic caught it. "I will find what you hold dear, Rossi, and I will burn it to the ground." He stormed off the stage. "Ava, now." Matteo's voice was urgent in my ear. "The room is unstable. Get out!" "The back room," I whispered. "Where Seraphine was." "I have to check." "Ava, abort." 60 seconds. I didn't wait. I dropped my tray onto a bus station and moved, melting into the chaos as people started to murmur and move. I slipped through the staff-only door. The hallway was empty, pulsing with the sounds of the kitchen. I saw the room Seraphine had come from, a green room for speakers. A single guard stood outside, but his phone was to his ear, and he was gesticulating wildly, clearly getting orders. As he turned his back, I slipped inside. It was empty, just a couch, a vanity, but a door in the back was ajar, a storage closet. It wasn't for coats, it was for goods. 6 small, identical duffel bags were lined up on the floor. My heart hammered. I ripped one open, a cheap toothbrush, a plain set of clothes, and a small, worn, brown stuffed bear with one button eye. Finny. Anna's bear. She'd had it since forever. I'd stitched that button eye back on myself, 2 weeks before I ran. I grabbed the bear. "Ava." Marco's voice screamed in my ear. 2 men, badged. They're not hotel security. They're Vincent's. They're fake cops. They're blocking the service exit. Get out. Main hall. Now. I burst from the room, clutching the bear, and ran back into the ballroom. I dropped all pretense of being a waitress. I ran. "Matteo." I yelled, just as I saw them. 2 men in dark suits, guns holstered, making a line for me. Matteo was already moving. He intercepted me, grabbing my arm, not hard, but with a force that pulled me off my feet. "This way, not the front door." He hauled me toward the parking garage escalator. We slammed into the back of the town car. Marco was already in the passenger seat, his gun drawn. "Go! Go! Go!" The driver peeled out of the garage. "We're clear," Marco said, looking behind us. "No," I panted, clutching the bear. "We're not." In the side mirror, I saw it. A black SUV. No plates. That had been parked across from the hotel. Its lights flashed on, and it pulled out. Fast. "They're behind us," I said. Matteo looked at me. "You're sure?" "I know what it feels like to be hunted." My hand, shaking, went to the chain around my neck. I ripped the pendant out from under my shirt and squeezed it hard. The SOS. A light on Marco's console flashed red. "Signal confirmed, boss." "Driver," Matteo said, his voice impossibly calm. "Protocol S, now." We swerved onto the FDR, heading for the bridge. The SUV stayed right on us, weaving through traffic like a missile. "They're gaining," Marco said, his voice tight. We were approaching the toll plaza. "Now," Matteo ordered. The driver did the craziest thing I'd ever seen. He didn't pick a lane. He floored it, aiming for the concrete divider between two lanes. The SUV, forced to commit, swerved into the cash-only lane on our right. At the last possible second, our driver S-weaved a violent, screeching turn, cutting hard left, scraping the concrete barrier and blowing through the EZ Pass lane at 60 miles an hour. I looked back. The SUV was stuck, blocked by a semi-truck at the toll booth. My heart was trying to escape my chest. We were safe. The car was silent as we crossed the bridge, the lights of Manhattan retreating behind us. We pulled into the secure garage beneath the brownstone. The heavy steel door rolled down, sealing us in. I sat there shaking, clutching Anna's bear. Matteo didn't move. He just watched me. "Ava," he said, his voice heavy with the night's events. I met his gaze. "Amelia has a car fueled and waiting. A new name, a house in Vermont. You can be there by sunrise. You will be safe. You never have to see this world, or me, again." He paused. I will continue to look for Anna. But you will be out." He was offering me the door again. "Or," he said, "you stay. We use that bear. We use your memory of Seraphine. We use the financial records, and we end this. But if you stay, what just happened, that's your life. I can't promise to protect you from it. Only with you." The choice, the one he always gave me. I looked down at the small, dirty bear. I thought of Anna, 15 now. I thought of Seraphine's poison whisper. Sparrows always come back. I looked up at Matteo. "You told me you were the invisible knife," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "Then teach me how to be sharp." His eyes held mine. He saw the terror, and he saw the resolve. He nodded. "Once. We stay," I said, "and we finish it." My choice hung in the air of the brownstone, heavy and final. The days of me being a ghost, a victim hiding in the walls, were over. I had chosen to be the knife. Matteo accepted my decision with a grave nod. The war room in the study changed. The atmosphere of quiet investigation turned into one of sharp, focused aggression. But Matteo's weapons remained spreadsheets, law books, and the telephone. He began what he called legal violence. "Vincent's power isn't guns. Ava," he explained, his eyes never leaving the 3 monitors that glowed with bank routes and shipping manifests. "It's impunity. It's the belief that his money and his connections make him untouchable. We are going to touch him. Everywhere." For 48 hours, he was a storm. I sat on the couch, Anna's bear in my lap, and watched him dismantle an empire. He didn't send men. He sent court messengers. "Amelia," he'd bark into his phone, "file the first civil suit, wrongful imprisonment based on fraudulent contracts, name the scholarship fund and every one of its board members. Yes, all of them. Send a copy of the filing to the Post." He'd hang up and make another call. "Miles, I need a simultaneous lien. All assets of Morelli Cold Transport. Freeze the trucks. I don't care about the produce. The paperwork I sent you proves they're unregistered carriers of hazardous materials. The solvent I told you about, file it yes. Now." He was choking the source. He leaked forged invoices to a financial reporter invoices so close to Vincent's real ones that they would trigger an immediate, chaotic audit. He was cutting off the money, the mobility, and the reputation, all at once. It was a masterpiece of bloodless legal warfare. And it was working. By the third day, Vincent was hemorrhaging partners. The state senators from the gala had publicly denounced him. "We thought we were winning. We thought we were in control." On the fourth day, Marco missed his check-in. Marco, who was always 5 minutes early. Marco, who joked that Matteo was scarier with a laptop than his father was with a shotgun. Marco, who had become a quiet, reassuring presence, the man who always made sure my door was locked. He just vanished. "He's not answering," Matteo said, his voice a tight wire. He was looking at a tracking app on his phone. Marco's SOS pendant, the same kind he'd given me, was offline. The dread in the room was so thick I could barely breathe. Then the front doorbell rang. We both froze. No one rang the front bell. Not ever. Matteo motioned for me to stay, but I followed him. He looked through the peephole. The stoop was empty. He unlocked the door, the sound of the deadbolt echoing in the silent hall. On the top step sat a small white cardboard box, a bakery box. He brought it inside, placing it on the kitchen island, the same island where he'd offered me the pendant. He didn't open it. He just stared at it. "Matteo." He opened a drawer and pulled on a pair of black leather gloves. Slowly, he lifted the lid. My stomach heaved. It wasn't blood. It wasn't anything graphic. It was worse. Inside, on a bed of tissue paper, was a cheap, plastic-handled paring knife, the kind with a flimsy blade, the kind we used to peel potatoes by the 100 in the camp kitchen. And scratched into the white plastic handle, crude and deep, was the tiny, unmistakable shape of a sparrow. Beside it lay a single black burner phone. As we stared at it, the phone vibrated, a harsh buzz against the cardboard. It rang. Matteo put it on speaker. His face was granite. "Matteo Rossi," he said. The voice that answered was not Vincent's. It was silken, amused, and chilled me to my very soul. "Hello, darling," Madame Seraphine purred. "I do hope you received our little housewarming gift, a sparrow for your lovely nest." "Where is he, Seraphine?" "Oh, the big one. He's fine, a little bruised, but he's a gentleman. Unlike your brother-in-law, Vincent, he's all rage and no style. So messy." She sighed, a sound of pure theater. "He wants to hurt you. He wants to burn your house down." I told him, "Vince, darling, that's not how you negotiate. You don't break the asset you want to trade." "What do you want?" Matteo's voice was dangerously quiet. "Vincent wants the ledger, the priest's book. He wants the maid silenced. But She paused. "I'm more practical. I just want the maid, a sparrow for a hawk. You bring Eva to me. You get your soldier back. Simple." The line went dead. Matteo stood there, his gloved hands clenched into fists on the counter. His entire system, his laws, his money, his firewalls was useless. She had bypassed it all and taken a person. She had changed the rules of the game. "I'll call my team," he said, his voice thick with a cold fury I hadn't heard yet. "We'll find him." "No." My voice was quiet, but it cut through his. "You won't." He turned to me, his eyes black. "I am not trading you, Eva. That is not on the table." "You said we win by being the opposite of them," I said, my heart hammering, but my words steady. "They take. They control. You gave me a choice. Now I'm making it. This is not a choice. It's a suicide mission. It's a negotiation, I shot back. And she's not your enemy. Mateo, she's mine. I know her. I know how she thinks. She's not messy. She's right. She's practical. She thinks I'm still the same terrified girl she recruited. She's underestimating me. Your men, you're a threat. But me, I'm just a lost asset. Let me make the call. We stared at each other, the tension crackling. He was a man who controlled everything, and I was asking him to give up the one thing he'd sworn to protect. You can't control me and save me at the same time. Mateo, I whispered, you have to pick. His jaw worked. He closed his eyes for a single, painful second. He opened them. What's the plan? I picked up the burner phone. I set the terms. I set the place. A place I know. Pier 45, the old Red Hook ferry terminal. It's where I used to sleep when I first got out. It's a dead end. Isolated. Good for a trade. And I go with you. No. She said alone. She'll see you a mile away. She'll panic. And Marco will be... I couldn't say it. I go alone. Absolutely not. Then you've already lost him. We compromise, he said, his voice final. You won't see me, but I will be there. You won't be alone. You'll be unseen. He took me back to the study. He pulled up a new screen, a mosaic of grainy black and white images, city traffic cameras, residential security feeds. I've had a team mapping this for a week. I can see every street within 4 blocks of that pier. He pointed. Amelia and a federal litigator will be here, in a van. They have a writ of habeas corpus for Marco, ready to file. The second we have him, she files it, triggering an official response. He pointed again. The Nest Mobile Clinic, the free doctors. It'll be parked here, disguised as a food truck. They're on standby. He was building an infrastructure of rescue, not an army, a safety net. Fine, I said. I'll make the call. The pier smelled of salt, diesel, and decay. The wind was brutal, whipping off the black water and stinging my face. I walked, my boots echoing on the rotting wood planks. And there she was. Seraphine stood at the end of the pier, a silhouette against the distant glittering lights of Manhattan. Her platinum hair was almost white in the gloom. Marco was on his knees, his hands bound to a thick pylon. He was bruised, but conscious. He saw me and shook his head. A desperate, silent no. Well, Seraphine's voice drifted on the wind. The sparrow comes home to roost. You look better. That cold-blooded Italian, he's been taking good care of you. Does he make you feel safe? Little bird? Is that it? My panic was a living thing, clawing up my throat, the smell of the diesel. Her voice. It was all pulling me back to the camp. No. I planted my feet. I used the trick Amelia had taught me. Grounding. 5. I saw the splintered wood of the pier, the oily sheen on the water, Seraphine's red coat, the lights of the city, Marco's pale, angry face. 4. I felt the wind cutting my cheeks, the cold metal of the SOS pendant under my shirt, the grit on the railing under my hand, my own heart hammering against my ribs. 3. I heard the water lapping at the pylons, the distant hum of the BQE, Seraphine's mocking laugh. I held her gaze. Let him go. Seraphine, I'm here. This is about me and you. Oh, it is, she said, taking a step closer. You were always my favorite. You know, so quiet, so breakable. Matteo Rossi. Matteo's voice came from the shadows behind me. He walked out onto the pier, his hands empty and visible at his sides. He wore no coat, just a dark sweater, as if the wind couldn't touch him. Seraphine's two men who had been hidden stepped out, raising their weapons. Now, boys, Seraphine said, a flicker of irritation in her voice. She looked at Matteo, intrigued. You broke the rules. Mr. Rossi, I said alone. I'm not here for a trade, Matteo said, stopping a good 20 feet away. He was holding a slim manila folder. I'm here with a deal. For you. Seraphine laughed. A deal. Witness protection, Matteo said flatly. A new name, a new life, untouchable. In exchange for that. He tapped the folder. A signed affidavit, and the full list, not just Vincent, the clients, the donors, the ones who came to the galas. Seraphine's laughter turned brittle, ugly. You think you can just buy me like one of your shell companies? I know what you are, Matteo said, his voice dropping, carrying on the wind. I know you were the first. I know you were a sparrow before they even had a name for it, the one they promoted instead of branded, the one who survived by becoming the zookeeper. The laughter died. Her face crumpled. He had seen her. Under the platinum hair and the red coat, he had seen the original victim. They took everything, she whispered, her voice raw, stripped of all its silk. She looked at her phone, the one she'd used to call him, as if it were a snake. With a sudden, violent scream, she threw it into the water. Yes, she cried, tears streaming down her face, cutting through her makeup. Yes, I'll give you the list. I'll give you all of them, but not for that. She pointed a shaking finger at me. I want her. Anna, the girl she left behind. Vincent has her. He's moving her tonight. You get Anna out before sunrise, or the deal is dead and you'll never find any of them. It was a confession, a plea, a new bargain. A shot cracked through the night. It wasn't from Seraphine's men. It came from the darkness at the base of the pier. Seraphine reacted on pure instinct. She didn't run. She shoved me. Down, she screamed. I hit the deck as she stumbled back, a dark stain blossoming on her shoulder. She'd taken the bullet meant for me. Vincent Morelli stepped out of the shadows, flanked by 4 of his own men, a smoking gun in his hand. You were always too sentimental, Seraphine, he snarled. And you, he leveled the gun at Matteo. You're finished. Matteo didn't dive for cover. He didn't reach for a weapon. He pressed a button on his own phone. Now, he roared. It wasn't gunfire that answered. A set of high beams flashed to life, illuminating the pier, pinning Vincent in the glare. The food truck, the mobile clinic, slammed its service window open. 2 people in scrubs, Doctors Without Borders written on their jackets, leaped out with a gurney and a full trauma kit. They ran towards Seraphine, towards the guns, screaming, "We have a critical injury, clear the way." At the same instant, Amelia Park's van screeched around the corner, blocking the pier's exit. She jumped out, her phone held high, already on a call. "The warrant is live," she yelled, her voice amplified by a small megaphone. "Vincent Morelli, you are charged with kidnapping, human trafficking, and conspiracy. Federal agents are 3 minutes out." Vincent was trapped. His men looked confused. They were prepared for a gunfight, not a civilian rescue. They were surrounded by paramedics and lawyers. Matteo was already at Seraphine's side, pressing his own hands to her wound. I scrambled over and cut Marco's bonds with the knife I'd hidden in my boot. The wail of distant sirens grew closer. Vincent looked at the medics, at Amelia, at the approaching lights. He had been outmaneuvered, beaten, not with bullets, but with paperwork, publicity, and a team of doctors. He dropped his gun. The sirens from the pier were a chaotic symphony, but Matteo wasn't waiting for the finale. Vincent was on his knees, hands cuffed behind him, his face a mask of furious disbelief as federal agents surrounded him. The Doctors Without Borders team, the civilian medics, were working fast on Seraphine, who was stabilized on a gurney. Her eyes, sharp with pain and urgency, found Matteo. "He was moving her tonight," she hissed, clutching the bandage on her shoulder. "A cold storage warehouse, Westchester. He called it the pharmaceutical depot. Sunrise. Rossi, he said he'd have them on a boat by sunrise." Matteo didn't hesitate. He looked at Amelia. "You have him? The warrant is live. Handle the transfer to federal custody." He turned to the medics. "Keep her alive. She's our primary witness." Then he looked at me. His gaze was intense, focused. "Ava." He jerked his head toward the town car, the one we'd arrived in. Marco, his face bruised but his eyes clear, was already in the driver's seat, the engine roaring to life. "We have less than 3 hours," Matteo said, pulling me into the back seat. "We're going for Anna." We tore out of the city, a dark shadow moving against the flow of early morning traffic. The adrenaline from the pier hadn't faded. It had sharpened into a cold, vibrating dread. We were going into the heart of it. Seraphine, against all medical advice, had given Marco the exact address before they'd loaded her into an ambulance, a food distribution center in a bleak industrial park. We didn't go in fast. We parked on a hill a half-mile away, watching. The warehouse was lit up. 2 men on the main gate, Marco said, passing a pair of night vision binoculars to Matteo. "I count at least 4 more patrolling the loading docks, all armed. They're not expecting a raid. Boss, they're expecting someone." "They're expecting us," Matteo said, his voice grim. Vincent's last call, if he was smart, was to them. "They'll be under orders to dispose of the inventory if we show up." My blood froze. Inventory. Anna. "So we don't go in as an army," Matteo said, his mind already working, dissecting the situation. "We don't go in shooting. That triggers the lockdown. We go in quiet. We cut the power." "A place that size," Marco said, "it's got industrial generators." "It does," Matteo agreed. "But the main grid switch controls the fire safety system. By law, fire safety overrides security. I'm not triggering the generator. Marco, I'm triggering the default. We cut the main power. The magnetic locks are required to fail safe. They must release." He wasn't going to fight them. He was going to unlock them. He and Marco moved out, vanishing into the shadows of the industrial park, dressed in black, heading for the main transformer junction a block away. I was in the mobile clinic, the food truck, which had followed us from the city. It was our command center. Amelia was in her van nearby, coordinating a legal perimeter. My earpiece crackled. "Ava." Matteo's voice was low. "We're in position, but I need eyes inside. I'm sending you the schematics. Tell me where they're holding them." I looked at the tablet, a blueprint. Seraphine said Freezer 3, the pharmaceuticals wing. Suddenly, the entire warehouse, the entire block, went black. The deep, humming silence was immediate. I heard faint shouts from the warehouse. "The grid is down," Matteo said. "Marco, Eva, you're on. Go, go." Marco materialized at the clinic door. "Stay behind me." We moved through the darkness to a rear service entrance. Marco tried the handle. It was locked solid. "He lied," Marco hissed, pressing his ear to the steel. "The locks didn't fail. They're on an internal battery backup." "He must have a dead man's switch," I whispered, the panic rising. "He knew. He's trapped them in there." "There's a keypad," Marco said, using a small tool to pry the cover off. It glowed with a faint red light. "We don't have time to cut through this. Boss, we're locked out. It's a keypad. Needs a code." The line was silent for a beat. "How many digits?" "Marco." Matteo's voice was tight. 12. It's a 12-digit numeric. Another pause, then a sharp intake of breath. "It's his offshore account," Mateo said. The realization was sharp, cold. "The one I found, the one he thought no one on Earth knew. His escape fund. He's using it as a password." "Give it to me, boss," Marco said, his fingers poised. Mateo recited a string of 12 numbers. 9, 1, 4, 2, 2, 7, 8, 3, 9, 0, 1, 1. Marco punched them in. The keypad light flashed green. A heavy thunk echoed from inside the door. It was open. "We're beating him with numbers. Marco," Mateo's voice came. "Not bullets." The air inside was freezing. The only light came from the dim red emergency bulbs. We were in a metal corridor, the smell of Freon and cold steel filling my lungs. "Freezer 3, I whispered, my voice shaking, my breath pluming in front of me. We found it, a massive, insulated door, inches thick. Marco grabbed the heavy industrial latch and pulled. The blast of cold air that hit us was painful. It was like walking into a wall of ice. And inside, they were there, not in cages, but on metal cots, small, huddled figures under thin, silver mylar blankets. They were packed in. "Oh, God," Marco whispered. One of them sat up, her eyes wide with terror. She was taller than I remembered, gaunt, her hair lank. But I knew her. I knew her face. "Anna!" She flinched, pulling the blanket up to her chin, cowering. She didn't recognize me. I was just another shadow in a dark, terrifying room. "Anna," I said again, moving slowly, my hands open. "It's me, it's Eva." She just shook her head, tears freezing on her face. I had to reach her. I had to pull her back. I thought of the camp, the games we played, the slang we used to pass notes, to give warnings, the code we'd invented. "Hey," I said softly, crouching down. "It's cold. We go now. Anna, the soup is on." Her head snapped up, her eyes, wide and terrified, focused. The soup is on. Our signal, the one we'd whispered in the dark for a year. It meant the coast is clear. Run now. "Hey, Eva." Her voice was a cracked, frozen whisper. "It's me." I pulled the yellow scarf from my coat pocket, the scarf Amelia had given me, the signal for the nest safe houses. "We're all going, right now. All of you." I turned to the other girls, who were now sitting up, watching. "We're here to help." "Marco," I said into my mic, my voice breaking. "We have them. They're so cold." How many? Mateo's voice was urgent. I counted 8. There are 8 girls. Anna is confirmed. Marco was already helping them up, wrapping them in thicker blankets from his pack. "We are secure. We have the package." I did a final check of the dark, freezing room. "No one left behind," I said, my voice thick. "We're coming out." We shuffled them into the corridor, and the main lights of the warehouse blazed to life. We were flooded in harsh, white fluorescence. Standing at the end of the hall, by the main loading dock, were the federal agents, and standing between 2 of them, in handcuffs, was Vincent. They must have brought him here from the pier to open his own warehouse. He saw me. He saw the line of shivering girls. He saw Anna, clinging to my arm. The mask of the charming businessman, the philanthropist, was gone. His face, which had been pale with shock, turned a deep, blotchy purple. He lunged, a guttural roar ripping from his throat. The agent strained to hold him. "You!" he screamed, his eyes fixed on Mateo, who was walking calmly toward us from the dock entrance. "You're dead. Rossi, you broke the code. You think this stops me? My organization will burn this city down to get you. I will have a war in the streets by noon." Matteo didn't even flinch. He walked past Vincent as if he were a piece of furniture. He was looking at Amelia, who stood by the dock door, holding a tablet high, its screen glowing. "Amelia," Matteo said, his voice calm, "is the feed live?" "Live, Matteo," she confirmed, to the district attorney, the attorney general, and the Times press wire. Matteo finally turned to Vincent. His expression wasn't angry. It was almost pitiful. "You still think you have an organization, Vincent?" he asked. "You still think you have cover?" Amelia tapped her screen. "As of 45 seconds ago," she announced, her voice ringing with authority, "we have officially submitted, via live legal stream, the complete Sparrow ledger from Father Luis. We have submitted the verified offshore account numbers. We have submitted the full, signed, and videotape testimony of Madame Seraphine, which includes the entire client list, and," she gestured to us, "we have 8 counts of federal kidnapping, charge on site, with 8 victims recovered live." Vincent stopped struggling. The color drained from his face. The war he'd threatened to start, it was over. The politicians, the clients, the friends he relied on, they weren't his army. They were his co-conspirators. And Matteo had just given them all up. A tiny bright red dot appeared on Amelia's chest. "Sniper," Marco roared, shoving Amelia down behind a forklift. Crack! The sound of the rifle was deafening, echoing off the steel rafters. I didn't have time to breathe. Matteo moved. He didn't look for the shooter. He didn't reach for a gun. He threw himself at me. His body hit mine, a solid, desperate impact, driving us both backward, behind a massive stack of steel-plated shipping containers. I heard the ping of the bullet striking the metal, exactly where I had been standing. I landed hard on the concrete, the air knocked out of me, with Matteo's full weight pinning me down. "Matteo," I gasped, terrified. "I'm fine," he grunted, but I felt a sudden, sticky warmth spreading through the fabric of his sweater, just above his shoulder. "You're hit. You're bleeding." "It's a graze," he said, his voice tight with pain. He pushed himself up just enough to look at me, his body still shielding mine, his eyes scanning the catwalks above. "Marco. No return fire, I repeat. Do not engage. This is a clean scene. We have the package. Do not engage." He was protecting the evidence. He was protecting the legality of the rescue. He would take a bullet before he let one of his men turn this into a mob shootout. The federal agents, not bound by his order, were already moving, weapons drawn, screaming. "Shooter on the catwalk, Sector 4. The sirens, dozens of them, converged on the warehouse, a deafening, overwhelming wave of sound. It was over. The next few minutes were a blur of red and blue lights. The federal agents swarmed the catwalks, apprehending the sniper, one of Vincent's last loyal bodyguards. The girls, including Anna, were being gently guided by the medics into the warm, safe ambulance, the mobile clinic. They were finally safe. Marco, I saw, was fine, just bruised, his anger cold and sharp. I saw them lead Seraphine out of a separate, unmarked car. Her arm was in a sling, her face gray, but she was walking. A female agent put a fresh set of handcuffs on her. Seraphine looked across the chaotic scene and saw me. She didn't smile. She didn't look sorry. She just nodded. Once. Accepting her part of the deal. I walked over to Matteo. He was leaning against the side of the clinic, his face pale, while one of the medics applied a heavy field dressing to his shoulder. The bullet had torn a nasty groove through the muscle, a graze, but a deep one. I just stood there, my body finally starting to shake. He looked up at me, his eyes dark in the flashing lights. He saw the terror still clinging to me. He reached out with his good hand. He didn't touch me. He just held it out, palm up, in the space between us. I placed my trembling hand in his. His grip was strong, warm, and real. "It's over, Eva," he said, his voice raw. "You'll have enemies everywhere now," I whispered. "The family, the clients you exposed, Vincent." Matteo looked at the line of police cars. He looked at the ambulance where Anna and the others were finally safe, finally warm. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion and pain, "I will be hated more than any man in this city. But tonight, they will be free to sleep for the first time in years." He squeezed my hand. "It's a fair trade." The day after the warehouse was a new kind of loud. I woke up, not in the brownstone, but in a clean, quiet room with a window that faced the sunrise. I was in one of the nests, the safe house in Queens, run by a retired trauma nurse named Helen. Anna was asleep in the twin bed next to mine, clutching the one-eyed bear, Finny, in a grip so tight her knuckles were white. It was the first time I had seen her sleep for more than an hour at a time. I padded into the common room. A small television on the wall was playing the morning news, the volume low. And there, on the screen, was Matteo. It was cell phone footage from the night before, grainy and chaotic, lit by flashing red and blue lights. But the audio was clear. It was Amelia's voice, amplified, reading off the warrant. It was Vincent's enraged, desperate roar about a war in the streets. The headline wasn't what I expected. It wasn't mob shootout in Westchester. It was financier Matteo Rossi exposes multi-state trafficking ring linked to own family charity. The anchor was almost breathless. "What we are seeing," she said, "is a financial and legal implosion, Mr. Rossi, in a move that has stunned Wall Street and law enforcement, didn't just tip off the feds. He live-streamed the entire legal case ledgers, offshore accounts, even a witness affidavit directly to the Attorney General's office, effectively blowing the whistle on his own family's associates." I sank into a chair. He hadn't just won. He had confessed. He had taken the path of absolute transparency, a strategy so alien to his world that they never saw it coming. He didn't just cut out the cancer, he irradiated the entire system, including himself. He had chosen public justice over private revenge. He had, as he'd promised, become the most hated man in his world. And in doing so, he had become the most powerful man in ours. He was, in effect, burning his bridges and building a fortress on the ashes. The next few weeks were a lesson in a new kind of survival. Anna and I stayed at the nest. It was a place where locks were only on the inside of the bedroom doors, a place run by women. Anna was distant. She was 15, but she looked 10. Her trauma was a frozen lake I didn't know how to cross. But Helen, the nurse, knew. We went to therapy, not in a cold office, but in the kitchen, while baking bread. "Today," the therapist said, "we're going to practice boundaries." She didn't mean fighting, she meant words. She had me practice on her. "I am not ready to talk about that. Please do not stand that close to me. No. Just no." A word that had been a death sentence for a decade of my life. Here. It was a graduation. Amelia arrived every few days. She wasn't just a lawyer, she was a life architect. She opened a bank account for me, in my own name, with funds from a victim's assistance grant she'd secured. Then she opened one for Anna. "This is yours," she said, handing me the debit card. "Your power, your no and your yes are in here." Matteo, I heard, was at war. He visited the nest only once in the first week. His arm was in a sleek, black sling, the graze from the sniper's bullet healing. but his face was etched with a new kind of exhaustion. "They held the meeting," he told me, standing in the nest's small, sterile garden. He wouldn't come inside, as if his world was too toxic to bring in. "A blood meeting," I whispered. Just a phrase. But yes, the old guard, my uncles. They demanded my head. I broke the code. Omerta. The silence. "What did you do?" "I gave them a choice," he said, his voice flat. "The old way is dead. The FBI has the Sparrow list, the clients, the politicians. Everyone Vincent ever did business with is either running or turning state's witness. The old way is a sinking ship. I offered them the only lifeboat." He looked at the small flowers Helen had planted. "I'm selling the nightclubs, the high-interest loan books, anything that doesn't hold up in the daylight. We're keeping the real estate, the legitimate holdings." He then looked at me, his dark eyes intense. "And I'm establishing a new foundation. Amelia is on the board. 100% of the seized Morelli assets are going into it. We're calling it the Sparrow Fund. It will finance this house, and the clinic, and a dozen more like it." He wasn't just cutting out the rot, he was using the rot as fertilizer. The loose ends of our old lives were tied up, one by one. Amelia came by with a small, sealed evidence bag. "Seraphine," she said, sitting with me at the kitchen table. She gave them 16 hours of videotape testimony. She named everyone, the judges, the senators. She's in the Federal Witness Protection Program. She's gone. She'll be on a plane to a new life before the end of the day. Amelia pushed the small bag toward me. "She left this for you. It was in her personal effects." I opened it. Inside was a cheap, silver-plated ring with a cloudy, blue glass stone, the kind a girl would buy for $10 from a street vendor. It was, I realized, the last piece of the person she was before she became Madame Seraphine, a goodbye, not to me, but to the sparrow she had been. Even Marco returned. He showed up at the nest's front door with 3 bags of groceries, a week after the warehouse. His face was a map of yellow and purple bruises, but his smile was the same. "Hey, Eva," he said. He looked past me and saw Matteo, who was in the garden for his weekly check-in. Marco set the bags down. "You know, boss," he called out, his voice rough. "I've been on your father's payroll, and I've seen men who use guns, men who use bombs. You." He shook his head, a small, awed laugh escaping him. "You're the most dangerous man I've ever met, and you did it all with a laptop and a lawsuit. It's embarrassing, really." Matteo's rare, small smile flashed. "Good to have you back. Marco." Our family, stitched together by trauma and spreadsheets, was healing. As the weeks turned into a month, Anna started to talk. She started to laugh, a small, rusty sound, when Marco taught her how to pick the cheap lock on her own bedroom door. "Security," he'd said, "is about knowing how to get out, not just how to stay in." I was breathing. I was no longer a maid. I was no longer inventory. I was just Eva. Matteo and we started to try normal. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever done. He took me grocery shopping, in a real, public grocery store. I pushed the cart. He held the list. It felt bizarrely domestic. I flinched when a man stocking shelves moved too fast behind me, my hand instinctively flying to the SOS pendant I still wore. I looked at Matteo, embarrassed. He hadn't moved. He hadn't reached for me, hadn't tried to shield me. He just stood there, patient, a solid wall of calm. He just waited. He waited for me to assess the threat, see it was nothing, and take a breath. He was letting me be my own guardian. That night, we were in the brownstone kitchen. The house was quieter now. Most of the old staff, the ones tied to the family, were gone. I was making soup. The same kind Father Luis had given me. Mateo was trying to chop carrots. He was clumsy. His right arm, the one that had been grazed, was still stiff. "You're terrible at that," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "I am a financier," he said, not looking up from his massacre of the vegetables. "I excel at delegating." I laughed, a real, actual laugh. I reached over to take the knife, and a strand of my hair fell into my eyes. He went to brush it back. His hand, the one that had held mine in the flashing lights, stopped. It hovered in the air, an inch from my face. "May I?" he whispered. My heart didn't pound with fear. It pounded with power, the power of choice. I leaned forward, just that single inch, pressing my temple into his warm, gentle fingers. I nodded. "Yes," I breathed. His touch was a promise, not of passion, not of fire, but of something far more potent. It was a promise of safety, of consent. The final piece was the mark. The Sparrow Fund was officially active. Amelia's first project was the tattoo removal clinic, the one Mateo had funded in the village. She went with me. The doctor, a woman with kind eyes and a steady hand, prepped the laser. "We'll start today," she said, looking at my wrist. "It's faded. It'll probably take 5, maybe 6 sessions, and it will be gone. Like it was never there. Gone, the numbers, the sparrow, the brand." I looked at the ugly, blue-green stain that had defined my life, that had kept me in rubber gloves for 3 years. Just the numbers," I said, my voice quiet. "And the bird? Can you do that?" Amelia looked at me, confused. "The scar tissue underneath," I tried to explain. "The mark itself. I want to keep a faint line, a shadow of it." The doctor nodded, understanding immediately. "You want to erase the brand, not the history." "It's not theirs anymore," I whispered. "It's not a sign of ownership. It's a testament that I'm still here. I had survived, and I would carry the proof, not as a source of shame, but as a source of strength." Mateo, too, was solidifying his new world. A few of Vincent's old partners, the ones who had escaped the initial net, tried to fight back. They started a smear campaign, leaking stories about Rossi family infighting, trying to paint Mateo as a rogue element, just as unstable as Vincent. Mateo's response was, by now, predictable. He didn't send Marco. He called a press conference. He stood in front of a room of hostile financial reporters, and he did the unthinkable. He released a full, voluntary, independent audit of every single one of his holdings, his new, legitimate holdings. "My family's past is what it is," he said, his voice level, his bandaged shoulder a visible mark of the fight. "But my future, and the future of my name, is this: absolute transparency. You have the numbers. The business community, the ones he wanted to work with, the ones who had feared his name they didn't see a mob boss trying to hide. They saw a new standard. He hadn't just beaten his enemies, he'd made them obsolete. Spring came to New York, not with a gentle thaw, but with a series of clean, sharp breaks. The ice didn't just melt, it cracked. The first crack was the gavel, United States v. Vincent Morelli. I sat in the back of the federal courtroom next to Amelia when the judge handed down the sentence. Vincent, looking pale and 10 years older, didn't even look at us. He was sentenced to 45 years. No parole. But Mateo's legal violence hadn't stopped with him. The list Seraphine provided, combined with Mateo's financial maps, set off a wildfire. The Sparrow Network, which we learned had tendrils in 6 different states, was systematically dismantled. The real shock, the one that dominated the news for weeks, was the donors, the philanthropists, the real estate tycoons, the pillars of the community who had attended the galas. They were exposed, one by one. Some faced charges, others, the ones Matteo couldn't touch legally, were ruined by the one thing they feared more than prison, public shame. The audit he'd released had made him the standard for transparency, and his old associates were now radioactive. My life was unrecognizable. I was no longer Eva, the maid. I was Eva O'Connell, coordinator for the Sparrow Fund. I had an office. It was a small, bright room at the Queen's Nest safe house. I had a laptop and a budget. I was learning nonprofit management online, studying how to write grants, how to manage a payroll, how to build the infrastructure of safety that Matteo had started. Anna was thriving. She was enrolled in a public high school in a different borough, under a new, legally changed last name. She was on the debate team. She was loud. She argued about everything, from curfews to cafeteria food. It was the most beautiful sound in the world. She still had nightmares. We both did. But now, when she woke up in her own room with a door she could lock, in a house that was safe. Matteo, too, had officially stepped away. He resigned from the family. There was no grand ceremony, no dramatic exit. He simply walked away. He wasn't the head of the Rossi organization anymore. He was now the head of Rossi Compliance Group, a high-end consulting firm that companies hired to find the rot in their own finances. He used the same skills that made him an invisible knife to now make corporations bulletproof. He was, in the most ironic twist of all, a legal weapon for hire. A large portion of his personal assets, the money he'd made before all this, had been quietly transferred into a social trust, the trust that would fund the Sparrow Network indefinitely. Our lives had found a new, quiet rhythm. The terror of the warehouse, the pier, it had faded from a raw, open wound to a scar. The phantom limb of panic was still there, but it didn't rule me. One evening, in late May, we were on the balcony of the brownstone. The air was warm, smelling of city pavement and the first roses from the garden below. I had been living there, in my own suite, for 2 months. We were drinking tea, not hot cocoa, just tea. He was quiet, leaning against the rail, his sling long gone, though I knew his shoulder still ached when the weather turned. Anna got an A on her history paper, I said, just to fill the silence. He smiled, a real, soft smile. I'm not surprised. She has a strong legal mind. She terrified my new lawyer last week. She's going to be okay, I whispered. We all are, he said. He turned, his dark eyes watching me. He was, as always, giving me space, not crowding me. Eva, I waited. We've been at this for 6 months. In this house, this arrangement. He searched for the words. This is your home, for as long as you want it. That is a given. He took a slow breath. But I need to know what you want. From this. From me. Because I'm in this. We can do slow. We can do this quiet. Safe. Day-by-day healing. For as long as you need. He held my gaze, his honesty a physical weight. Or, he said, his voice dropping, we can do forever. I need to know which pace you're setting, because I will match it. My heart did a slow, painful flip. This was the ultimate negotiation, not a grand gesture, not a passionate declaration, a question, a granting of control. Slow or forever. He was offering me time, or he was offering me eternity. Both, I realized, were the same thing. They were a promise of safety, a promise that he wasn't going anywhere. I put my cup down. I stepped into his space. For the first time, without him inviting me, I laid my hand on his chest, right over his heart. It was beating, steady and strong. I think, I whispered, looking up at him, I want slow that becomes forever. Can we do that? He covered my hand with his thumb brushing over my knuckles. He didn't pull me closer. He didn't kiss me. He just held me there, in that shared space. Yes, he said, his voice thick. We can do that. Our celebration, when the final papers were signed and the last of Vincent's network was sentenced, wasn't at a gala. It was in the kitchen. It was me, Matteo, Amelia, and Marco. Anna was there, arguing with Marco about whether Star Wars was technically a fantasy or sci-fi. There was no champagne. There was no caviar. I made a huge pot of soup. Amelia brought a fresh loaf of sourdough bread. Marco brought a cheesecake he'd liberated from a bakery he was auditing for Matteo. We sat around the heavy oak table, the one where I used to scrub the floors, and in the center of the table, where a fancy floral arrangement might have been, was a simple, laminated piece of paper. It was the new hotline list for the Sparrow Fund, a dozen phone numbers in 3 different languages, for anyone who needed help, a culture of care, not of luxury. Later that night, long after everyone had gone, I stood in the quiet hallway by the front door. I was running my thumb over my wrist. The numbers were gone. The Sparrow was gone. All that was left, as I'd requested, was a faint, silvery tracing of the original scar tissue, a ghost of a mark. I hadn't realized Matteo had come up behind me. I touched the faded line, and a single tear, one I hadn't even known was there, traced a cold path down my cheek. It's not a brand of ownership, I whispered, my voice thick. It's a mark of witness. He was standing behind me, so close I could feel the warmth from his body. His voice, when it came, was a low rumble, right by my ear. It's not a shield of protection, Eva, he replied, his own voice raw. It's an invitation home. I turned, and he was there. He finally closed the distance. His good hand came up, and with a touch as soft as his words, he brushed the tear from my cheek. I looked past him, at the front door. The heavy deadbolt was thrown, but as I did every night, I had also fastened the slim, brass security chain. I looked at that chain. It wasn't a sign of fear. It was a sign of our new reality. Trust had the shape of caution. Matteo didn't try to unfasten it. He understood. He led me from the door, his hand warm and steady in mine. His enemies were shocked because he chose transparency. His friends were surprised because he chose kindness. But I knew he chose us. Thank you so much for listening to our story. We'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? Please drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's connect. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. It truly helps us out. And if you really loved it, please hit that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.